Chapter 41, The Road to Delano, Fall, December 2003. 3 months after his client pled guilty, Hatcher returned to court. Mondo's sentencing would be a routine matter. He'd either get 28 or 29 years to life. It all depended on how Judge Duffy felt about the 3 to 4 years for drug sales Ham and Alvis wanted tacked on to his 25 to life for first-degree murder. His attempted murder sentence would be served concurrently with the 25, a concession to Hatcher's stubborn lobbying behind the scenes. It was small in the scale of things, but Mondo really wanted that one extra year, and he urged Hatcher to fight for it. He believed he might actually get paroled someday, although Hatcher was sure that unless politics changed dramatically in California, that was the longest of long shots. In fact, a weightier issue loomed in Mondo's thoughts. At sentencing, he would be allowed to make a statement to the judge, and with Hatcher's help, he dictated a speech and honed it until it said exactly how he felt. He didn't care if it cost him his life. He had had things to get off his chest. This time, Mondo sat at the defense table instead of in the jury box. He wore his orange jail jumpsuit that told corrections staff he was among the most violent inmates. Hatcher did his best to make the case for 28 to life instead of the 29. Then he added, for the record, a brief statement declaring that the FBI informant had green-lighted the murder. Those words would be buried in the court's archives, but at least he'd said it aloud for some future student of criminal justice history to knowledge. He also cleared up a small point that bothered Mondo. Chuka had testified, and the media reported that he'd done the hit to earn his stripes with the NF. Mondo felt insulted by this statement. His family had enough of a reputation that he'd never had to earn any stripes. He was never jumped in. He was born into the cause. Besides, he never put in work for recognition. He did it only because he believed in it. Hatcher stayed on his feet. In his hands, he held Mondo's personal statement. Hatcher read it to the judge. Dear Judge Duffy, it said, my name is Armando T. Frias. I was named after my father. My father was 16 when I was born. Mondo did not look at Hatcher, nor did he turn to watch the Sanchez family who sat directly behind his back. Within 3 days of my release from the hospital, my family was involved in a shootout with SPD. My grandfather, my father, and some of my uncles were involved in the shootout. There are 14 children in my father's family, 6 boys and 8 girls. All 6 boys and some of the girls have been involved in the Norteño lifestyle. All the boys have been to prison, YA, or the county jail at one time or another. Presently, the brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, and cousins number around 70. I have uncles and cousins doing time now, some doing life. 2 uncles are presently in the county jail with me as well as 1 cousin. While Hatcher read his words, Mondo's back was straight and his head high, eyes focused on nothing. He looked as if he'd entered that world he often visited in jail, where memories and fantasies were more real than today, and the past was only life he had ever had. Hatcher continued reading. I want the court to know that there wasn't much choice for me in the beginning. The gang lifestyle was as much family as my real family. I was raised to believe in the Norteño cause. I was trained to be a soldier in the cause. I have always believed it was wrong to hurt women, old people, and little kids. I was taught there is a long history of Norteños being raped, tortured, and abused by the Mexican mafia, and I was a northern farmer and must protect my people. While my father was never a gang member, he was very much involved in the gang culture. While my father was in prison, an uncle and a family friend raised me. Both were very much involved in the gang culture. Mondo was referring to Uncle Smokey and Uncle Chico, who was more than friend in Mondo's eyes. After his last parole from state prison, my dad changed. He hasn't gotten into trouble with the law. He hasn't gotten into a fight in a long time. He tried to tell me, get out of the life. He would try to whip me when I got out of line and would tell me not to hang around with the gang. Then he stopped and tried to tell me that the gang life was not real. He tried to tell me that the gang life wasn't right, that it was phony. He tried to tell me that the drugs and violence was not part of the Mexican history. I didn't want to believe him. I thought he must have messed up, did something wrong, and that is why he left the gang life. You may remember another Sanchez murder. That Sanchez was a good friend of mine. His own gang killed him. He was killed because he refused to kill a friend of his. He didn't do what was expected of him. My thoughts at the time were that he knew what was expected of him. He knew what he was getting into when he joined the gang. At that time, I thought he was crazy not to follow through with the orders. He placed himself in that position. I was real sad about his death. Then I was faced with the same decision. From the bailiffs to the reporters to the Sanchez family, no one moved. This unusual statement to the court didn't sound as if it were written to draw sympathy from the judge. It was more a summary of a misspent life coming to a halt, a litany of errors, or perhaps a farewell letter to the free world. Hatcher read on. I was ordered to do this very bad thing. My life, to this point, led me to this situation. I know now that I didn't have to do it. I had a choice not to take a life. I made the wrong choice. I made the wrong choice because that was how I had been trained as a soldier most of my life. The rules are, if you don't do as ordered, I could wind up like my friend Sanchez. One of my uncles and my dad had been trying to get me out of the gangs, but I once again made the wrong choice. After I was brought back to Salinas and was locked up, I started to think about the family of Mr. Sanchez. I thought about what I had done, the reason I did it. I thought about his family, his mother and father. I wondered whether or not he had a son. I thought about my family and how they would feel if it were I. I thought about how I would feel if it were my son. My son means more to me than anything on this earth. I regret the fact that I took the life of another human being. I regret the fact that I was responsible for the loss of a life. It had been difficult to dictate certain sections of this statement, especially when it came to the question of remorse. Even with his future on the line, Mondo tried not to exaggerate. His personal rule was he never apologized unless he meant it, and he had to think long and hard about why he should say he was sorry for doing a job even Raymond Sanchez knew he was obligated to do. In fact, Sanchez was as quick to pull a gun out as he was. But Mondo could honestly say he was sorry he'd hurt the man's family because, with the absence of his son from his own life, he'd begun to view family as a sacred unit. The irony was Mondo too was a dropout now, green-lighted just like Raymond Sanchez. How strange to think he'd so quickly become a brother to the enemy he'd slain. He said in his statement that he did not expect Raymond's family to forgive him, but nonetheless hoped they would. Although he long ago admitted his guilt, he still dared not to write the word murder. It was in the incident. I also regret the fact that I will not be there to help raise my son. I regret that I will not be there for him through the tough times. Your homies turn on you when their lives are on the line with the cops or their own gang. I will try to tell him how it leads to death, long terms in prison, and heartache for the families on both sides. My dad told me I was leaving my son for him to raise. The kinds of things I was involved in before the incident and the incident itself shows me he was right. My dad and one of my uncles tried to tell me I needed to be cool. You've got a son now, settle down, stay away from those guys. I wish I had listened to them. I know now if I had listened, I would not have been involved in this horrible incident. Hatcher described Mondo's plans to spend his prison time constructively, to avoid fights, and to take college courses.